The perfect AI strategy. I think Anne said in her session, there's a benefit to going first in that you get it over and done with, and then you can listen to everybody else. There's a benefit to going a couple of people in that you can hopefully do what feels like building up what people have said and not copy what people have said in what you're presenting. There's going to be a lot of sort of similar themes, I think, in what we're saying now. Like we just said, we're here to talk you through the perfect AI strategy. Or at least we would be if my prompt writing skills were a bit better and I'd managed to get Copilot to sort of give us one to deliver to you. So my background isn't technical. I'm not an AI expert, and again, like Anne said, no one is an AI expert in this space. My experience is in delivering change through projects, programs, sometimes with technology, but often without. Again, culture is a key part of that process, and making sure that you can actually do these things in the background makes more sense than the technology itself sometimes.
Thank you, Amy. So kind of just again, I almost feel like a fraud standing up here and talking to everyone about AI. My background's commercial strategy, it's insight, it's analytics. And just by chance, I've ended up looking after the data team at Emerald. And I think I've inherited the data team because I know how to take that insight that they can generate and go and land it within an organization. But when we were kind of talking about whether we'd stand up and talk, I think both of us were saying we don't know enough. We'd quite like to go along to a session to hear about AI in the publishing sector, but we don't know enough. And I think that's probably reflective of where a lot of people are at the moment in terms of there's so much going on, and you've got a group of people that are professing to know so much and probably over-promising what they know, and you've got a big group of people that are almost feeling left behind or unsure and desperate to keep up. And I think we're here to talk about our experience of how we've taken AI forward in Emerald, the experiments that we've done, what's worked, what hasn't worked, and just feeling our way through this. And so actually kind of, although I say I stand up here as a fraud, I think I'm probably similar to an awful lot of people. It's just you're trying to keep up, you're trying to keep abreast of this very, very quick moving industry and kind of all of these market developments. So we're here to talk about what's worked well for us, our lived experience of dealing with AI over the last couple of years. And I almost feel like it's worth a round of, excuse the French, bullshit bingo, in terms of I'm going to talk about the narrative that everyone already knows, and that ChatGPT exploded AI onto everyone's consciousness. Anne already mentioned that earlier on, but 18 months ago, AI came along and everyone awoke to its potential. Actually, AI has been around for an awful lot longer than that. It's just Gen AI that's come around. And I don't know how many people in the room are confident talking about the difference between AI or Gen AI or AGI or all the various different flavors of AI that are out there. But it is everywhere. It's absolutely everywhere. It's the AI elephant in the room, as my Copilot image generated there. So with all this hype comes an awful lot of pressure, and I don't know about everyone else here, but we're feeling an awful lot of pressure from our C-suite to be doing something with AI. It's everywhere. We've got to do something. A number of years ago, this was apps. Everyone had an app, and you had a massive amount of pressure to go and develop the app. To a certain extent, it didn't really matter what it did. You just had to have one. You had to not be left behind. It was technology for technology's sake, and we're seeing the same now with an awful lot of AI for the sake of AI. I don't know if there are any runners or cyclists in the room, but I am a very, very keen runner, and the app I use for that is something called Strava. I don't know if people have heard of Strava or used Strava. And so they have just released their Gen AI offering, which is a text-based wrapper that comes around all of your stats. So I'll go for a run, I upload it to Strava, and it then tells me I spent this long in this zone, I ran this far, I ran this quick, and I spent all of that time. And previously it did this by charts, by graphs, by numbers. And now there is a text wrapper that sits around that says, I've crushed that latest run, that I'm trending upwards, that I ran quicker this time than I had done previously. It doesn't give me anything. I had all of that before from the charts and the graphs and the numbers. And Strava I wouldn't quite go as far as say it's being ridiculed for this, but it's being called out for kind of, that's AI for the sake of AI. What the commentators are missing out on a little bit is that Strava has also released recommended routes, which is built off AI, but it's not the Gen AI that everyone else is seeing, and it's a feature that people use and adds value, but Strava are being ridiculed for this Gen AI that's telling people that they've crushed their latest run type of thing. And I look at this and I'm trying to work out whether that's the end product, that's the end goal of what they're doing. If that is what they are trying to deliver, it's a waste of time. It's costing them money, it's costing them effort, and it's giving them bad press. But actually, if that's their stepping stone to future success, if that's them teaching their guys how to play around with these tools, how to experiment, and we're going to see something else coming down the line, there is massive benefit to that. And so I think we see quite a lot of parallels with what we're doing in terms of that. If that's the end product, no, they've wasted the time. But actually, it's a constant evolution, and then moving forwards and trying to work out how to push the boundaries. So it could be that we start off with a chatbot for a researcher telling them they've crushed their latest research that they've done, that then evolves into, I don't know, a scope checker that identifies duplicate submissions. One thing leads to the next. So it's just working out, I suppose, where we are on that journey. So like I said, neither of us have particularly strong technical backgrounds, but hopefully we understand how to land things within an organisation and push things forwards. And this is us talking about finding the balance between experimentation and intention. And I kind of wish we had it on our slides, because I think it's very, very similar to what Anne said in terms of curiosity and intention. I think we're talking about intention and experimentation. But yeah, so this is our lived experience of it.
And I think that the problem that we've got at the moment is it shouldn't actually be about AI at all. According to the Gartner, AI projects fail at twice the rate of any other IT projects that are out there. The problem is the conversations start in the wrong place. You wouldn't get a new hammer and then sort of walk into a room and think, how am I going to use my hammer to paint this room? You start with whether does the room even need painting? You'd be clear what tools you had available to you and what each of them does. You'd plan the improvements that you wanted in the right order to ensure the best success. AI initiatives need that element of R&D to ensure an understanding of what the tools are actually capable of. I could spend the rest of our time reading out a glossary of all the AI stuff, but as an example, AI uses data and algorithms to perform tasks that are usually associated with human intelligence. AI is good at analysis, at decision making, predictive modelling. It could be for things like virtual assistants, recommendation systems, and fraud detection. It's been used for a long time in finance for fraud detection. And there's some real potential here for publishing with the rise of paper mills and all that sort of thing. Whereas generative AI uses that data to generate new content, so text, images, music, videos. It's good at creativity and adaptability, but it can lack consistency. It took me about 5 or 6 prompts to get this image out of Copilot. It's not as easy as people sort of feel that it can be. This is chatbots, virtual assistants. They can engage in context-aware conversations. There are many potential applications for AI tools in the publishing industry, but as with any change activity, it's the underlying foundations that might actually cause success or failure. So erroneous data within systems can cause real problems when it comes to AI. And if used in the wrong way, those AI tools can exacerbate those existing problems. So to stretch the analogy, if I use that hammer to fill some holes in the wall, I'd probably end up making them much bigger. So there's examples of people implementing AI tools to transcribe meeting notes, and it's a great time saver, and people have seen real benefits from it. But if the underlying data is bad, that connection to transcribe meetings and make recommendations can actually then start surfacing content that is not supposed to be surfaced. So I've heard of an example where somebody did this, and people started getting reorg plans and performance review notes attached to a meeting because the name of the person was in both documents. So the data is the foundation, and that's why our Data Dan is here with me today. That is the foundation of these things, is sort of fixing that stuff in the background. Because it learns from whatever you feed it. There's obviously concerns around using Gen AI to produce content, because it starts to sound very samey, and you start to get the same bullet points pushed through. Hallucinations are sort of apparent in a lot of these things. But as long as you have that understanding of what the AI tools can do, what you actually want them to do. So those clear objectives around it. That best application comes when you're trying to solve something that's relevant and of value to the business that you're in. So being clear with that, what's possible with AI allows us to be intentional with our choices. And being clear with those targets allows us to be clear about what those outcomes are going to look like.
So if we think back kind of 18 months ago when AI, Gen AI really did explode onto everyone's consciousness, I think our first consideration was one of caution, one of governance, kind of risk avoidance. So externally, we had to protect the integrity of the scholarly record. Kind of when people are using this to produce content, we came out with statements along with an awful lot of other publishers to kind of prohibit its use in the generation of content. And I think that kind of nods to our overarching AI strategy. We're not a tech company. We're a publisher. We're never going to be at that absolute bleeding edge of this technical development. And we just want to kind of stick with the pack. We don't want to go and kind of make a name for ourselves by putting ourselves out there and saying that this is what we're going to do. We just need to keep up. And so I think we kept in line with everyone else in terms of kind of, no, this isn't to be used in the production of scholarly content. We need to understand what it does, how it works, and how it can evolve. And then we established a watching brief. Internally, we established an awful lot of oversight groups. So we established operational and risk governance groups for AI that kind of look at how it's being used in products and services that we've got, how it's being used in the tools that our staff are using. We established executive level kind of AI steering groups, again, to maintain that awareness of what's going on. Everything had to be governed. We wanted to make sure that we had control of this, that we weren't feeding information that was going to pop up in notes somewhere from someone transcribing a meeting, and then I think was it Samsung, one of the early examples that came out, and their meeting notes started popping up in ChatGPT. We saw all this and we wanted to take almost a risk-averse stance. At the same time, we also wanted to encourage an awful lot of experimentation and innovation. We wanted to encourage our staff to play around with this, to understand the art of the possible, what it can do, what it can't do, the risks that it brings and the opportunities as well. So we had AI training days where we'd train the whole company on AI. We had innovation days where we brought a number of techies together and non-technical people to understand what is the art of the possible, how can you do something with this, but within a governed environment using the tools that we'd set out and said, you can use this because we understand it's safe. Everything else we're going to tell you can't use until it's been authorised or gone through various number of groups. It's that intentional experimentation that we really, really want to encourage. We want to encourage people to try and find a problem and go and solve it, not solve it with AI for the sake of AI, but kind of see where that leads to. There is a balance to strike between kind of this governance and this experimentation. And I think it's no exaggeration to say that everyone is going to be consciously using AI within 5 years' time. I think an awful lot of us are using AI now in our everyday lives, whether we realise it or not, but consciously in 5 years' time, everyone is going to be using it. And so there's a real need for us to educate and train our staff on how to be AI literate, what the different terms mean, understanding of prompt engineering, responsible and ethical considerations. We need to make sure that our guys are trained up on that. And to do that, they need to be able to experiment. They need to be able to have a play around with this and understand. But I come back to it, they need to be safe as well. And then the final thing I'd say in terms of where we started, we wanted to keep abreast of the market as much as we could. Like I say, we're not a tech company, we're a publishing company, but we still need to understand the impact this is going to have on us as a publisher. So I've seen examples already of AI automating the entire researcher workflow, from ideation, from lit reviews, to doing the research, to publishing a paper. Now, the paper isn't of significant quality, but in a couple of years' time, the rate of development for this, it will be. How do we keep aware of that, how that's going to affect our industry? We're seeing the rise of the zero-click internet, and cost per download is our single biggest metric for our customers. If we're seeing the zero-click internet evolve, how's that going to change the experience for customers? How's that going to change the narrative that we have with our customers in terms of the zero-click internet? So again, we're not going to be at the cutting edge of this, but we need to have an understanding of how this market is developing and evolving so that we can keep up with it and not be left behind. So I think we go back 18 months or kind of our experience, it's all been about getting the foundations in place, getting that basics, getting the governance in place, and then encouraging encouraging an environment of experimentation, but with purpose. So yeah, I'll pass it to you.
Cool. So I think OpenAI, when it exploded 18 months ago, it was as much of a surprise to the people at OpenAI as it was to everybody else. The models had been around since 2018, and then all of a sudden they obviously introduced ChatGPT, and it just exploded and became one of the fastest growing apps on the internet. So like Dan said, we're not a tech company with a massive server farm in the middle of the desert. We're a publishing company. And while, ultimately, it would be great if there was a model that had the right expertise in academic publishing, there just isn't anything that fits that criteria. And like Dan says, what we're trying to do is sort of build that experimentation, allow the people that work for Emerald, that know publishing, that know academic publishing, to be able to have that ability to sort of grow and do those, exactly as Anne was saying before, it's about that curiosity around it. There's an example that I've heard in project management circles a long time ago, but it fits here too, where there was a toothpaste manufacturing company, and they were having serious problems, lots of complaints from customers, because the boxes that their toothpaste was going out into the world in, people kept having empty boxes. So they hired an expensive consultant to come in and say, what are we going to do about this? They built a massive piece of technology, because technology was going to be the solution to this, to prevent the boxes from going out empty. The first couple of days that it went through, they got all the analytics around it. It was great. It was saving them so much wasted stock going out, and it was fantastic. And then after a couple of weeks, they're looking at the analytics again, and the number of sort of empty boxes had dropped to zero. So this amazing tech that they put in wasn't finding any empty boxes anymore. So they all went down to the shop floor, have a look what's going on. And on the conveyor belt, where their wonderful thing that would sense whether these boxes were empty was, a couple of bits further down, there was a fan. Somebody had set up a fan, and it was literally just blowing the empty boxes off to the conveyor belt. Because a guy that worked there, the janitor that worked there, just got fed up with the alarm going off every time these things were there. So he came up with a solution that could have saved them probably millions in the tech, because he knows the shop floor, he knows what he's talking about, he knows what he's doing, and he was able to put this in place. So for us, we're expecting, at some point in the future, there's going to be this perfect academic, probably SLMs rather than LLMs, that all of us will be able to use, and it will be brilliant. But until then, our plan is we're going to partner with some amazing tech organisations who share our cultural aspirations, give us access to that best-in-class tech that we just wouldn't have access to if we didn't partner with them. We'll collaborate cross-industry. STM is one of the things that we're sort of heavily in at the moment. Those initiatives can move more slowly, but there's just massive benefit to being involved at this level. And these relationships, then, they feed our knowledge of AI. They help us to work through those what might be possibles. But alongside that, we have deployed a large language model in-house with our data platform using OpenAI, and the primary purposes of this is around experimentation. It allows our teams to take a look at what those others are doing at those big, expensive toothpaste machines, and just have a play around, see what it is in our own walled garden, to decide if that's worth it for us as well, or maybe just to stumble across something that might actually be better for us. So it's just that real mix of partnership and experimentation, to give our people the tools to be able to play, so we can see what other people are doing, realise what might solve our problems, and then just build that in the most effective way for Emerald.
And so we thought it would be useful to share kind of a list of things that have worked or haven't worked for us. And when we first kind of almost sat down to come up with this list, we didn't think we'd made that much progress. There are loads and loads of experiments that we've tried that haven't really gone anywhere. And then actually, the more you start to think about it, they've not gone anywhere yet. We're still evolving them, we're still developing them, they're still popping out new things. And I think naturally we gravitated towards, well, what have we released to market? What's out there in our offering for our customers or for our authors and we overlooked the foundations that we put in place in terms of the governance for internal and external. I think that's really set the foundations for us, and actually that's a massive success that we've had in terms of what our staff use, kind of the policy, the direction that we give to market, who we've partnered with to develop those foundations. And so actually I think that's a really big tick for us in terms of what we have done for AI that has worked, but we just overlooked it initially because we're just thinking, well, what have we released to market? What's out there for customers and authors to use? But like Amy said, we are actually developing a number of things in-house ourselves, and I'll come back to it. We're not a tech company, and I quite liked Sven's kind of analogy there about you don't want to get in the arms race with a tech company. That's not us. We want to understand how we can use these tools and develop them, but we need to make it work for us. So we've done a number of proof of concepts that are on the edge of being released now. And so I think when we were starting to write this 2-3 months back, kind of they were much further back, and it almost felt like they weren't a success. But so if we look at something like article transfer, where I'm sure lots of people are familiar with this, an article gets rejected, we want to make sure we retain it within our ecosystem, and so we look at that and go, well, that has a similarity, that has a scope match to this other journal, why don't you come and submit it to this journal? And we started off going down that route using some pretty pieced together technology in order to make it work, and we found that it's a proof of concept. It worked, it was delivering, it was doing what it needed to do, but we needed to scale it to be able to offer it across all of our journals. So we built not quite an all singing, all dancing solution on a data platform, but a technically capable solution that would deliver that at scale. And in doing that, we realised instead of having this at the end of the submission process, we could put it at the start of the submission process and recommend journals. We could offer it as a tool to editors for a scope check to help them manage the throughput of content. We could use it to identify duplicate submissions that are coming through the system. So kind of the intention was there originally to go and do something, and actually it wasn't anything innovative for the market. Other people were doing it, but we were almost reverse engineering it, trying to work out how to do it. So there was a bit of intention there with that experimentation, but that then has spawned a whole host of other things that we've then gone on and looked to develop and expand. And again, I come back to it, none of this is really bleeding edge. We're seeing lots of other people doing this, but this is us experimenting with the problems and the challenges that we're facing and making it work for us, rather than kind of going and doing what Strava have done and creating this tool that has no value at all, unless it is a stepping stone to something else. And there are other examples that kind of, when you start to think, actually have worked for us. We're thinking about kind of the governance that we're putting in internally. We're thinking about the services that we're offering to market, but we're also experimenting with Copilot and kind of the potential benefits that we'll see there. From a BI perspective, we're trying to understand how NLP, natural language processing, can better serve our stakeholders across the business by offering natural language insight. So rather than then coming to the BI team and saying, right, can we have this report that looks like this and does this and does this and does this, there's a natural language input on Power BI that they can go and type their query in. What's the average sales for this product for this country for the last 5 years? Bang, off you go. So there are lots of different options that kind of relate to that. I almost come back to the start in terms of what are we doing with AI. Everyone naturally gravitates towards that Gen AI because that's what the explosion was 18 months ago, and they all forget that, I mean, it's been around an awful lot longer than that. Yeah, I'll shut up now.
So like I say, our AI journey is just a work in progress, basically. It's far from perfect. Again, generating images through Copilot can prove that. It's very difficult to get it to spell things right once it's spelt them wrong. Sort of, we try and do things. So our strategy is basically to ride that wave of intentional experimentation. Anne talked about it as intentional curiosity. It is about being brave enough to do things with this new thing, but not just do anything with it. So we know that we need to do something, but we're concentrating on the what thing that we do. So thank you. I had one slide that I was trying to do where I was trying to put a trophy case that was empty and had got AI trophies. It misspelled AI about 5 times. It wouldn't make the trophy case empty, and every time I asked it to make it empty, it just filled it with more trophies. So, there's definitely downfalls to it all. Sorry for the question.
Hi, Ian again. I did think of a question. I really appreciated that you talked about things that haven't worked yet, or what we might call failure, and that's fine. I picked up one or two, but I just wondered actually, could you sort of recap the things that you've tried and that you've learned from? I think one you mentioned was sort of matching the papers to the scope of a journal, but perhaps there's some other things.
Yeah, so kind of, I think so originally that started off as article transfer, so kind of an article gets rejected and we want to understand what other journals that can be transferred to in the system that they have a match to. And essentially it gives us a similarity score, and we work out kind of where's the threshold that actually that will be accepted or kind of is appropriate for the scope of that. And it was our data scientists that came up with that, and we were having a surge in submissions at that time, and it made me ask a question around, well, kind of, can this identify duplicate submissions then? So if we've got submissions that are identical, if we've got a similarity score, surely if that comes out at 100%, that means they're a duplicate submission. And so that we then went away and went, oh yeah, we can identify all the duplicate submissions that we're getting across our estate, whether that's sequentially, it's being rejected and it pops up somewhere else, or whether that's concurrently and they're all coming at the same time. And then the data scientist cropped up and went, oh, well, you could stick that at the front of the submission process and kind of go, well, here's the different journals that we recommend you submit that paper to. Or actually, we could give that to an editor and say, well, this is the scope score for your for this paper, kind of, it's below 50%, I wouldn't even bother looking at that, it's 80%, move it to the next stage. And that got me thinking, kind of, I want to adopt what they use in finance in terms of credit checking. So if you go into a bank, I don't know, 30, 40, 50 years ago, you'd speak to the bank manager, he'd look you up and down and go, yes, I believe what you're saying, I'm going to give you money or not for your loan, for your mortgage. We don't give any of that stuff to our editors, to our reviewers. We kind of go, right, there's the information, you have a look at that and make your mind up. But hang on a minute, we're sitting on top of all of this insight that we could be giving them, say, look, this is the scope of it, here's the, mine's going blank, but we can give them an awful lot of information that we're not currently doing, so actually we can start surfacing that up and offer that as a tool.
It's trying to do those more admin-y things, exactly like you said, and so for the peer reviewers, so that they can focus their energy on the thing that they're actually skilled in doing and not having to do that admin piece as well.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers.